welcome your next storyteller, Anindya Kundu.
Okay, this works. Whew, tough act to follow. All right. So I grew up in Portland, Oregon, which gets a lot of credit for being wacky, wild, weird, and liberal, but it's also overwhelmingly white. And I wasn't always this brown version of Ryan Gosling that you see in front of you today. Growing up, I was actually shy, chubby, and awkward. And I got made fun of for things related to my background. In middle school, kids told me as a compliment that they were happy that I didn't smell like curry. And the first time a girl told me she had a crush on me in high school, in 9th grade, she had her friend come over who came over and told me, "Hey, Brianna has a bit of a Hindu crush on you." At the time, I was flattered, but thinking about it now, I should have been like, "Hey, tell Brianna I have a KKK crush on her too." But I always let it roll off my back. It didn't really matter to me because, honestly, one of those immigrant stories. I saw how hard my parents worked to allow me and my sister to have this life in this country. So none of that stuff could have ever fazed me. My mom, she put on hold this music career while me and my sister were growing up, and then after we became adults, she picked it up again, became semi-famous. Little shout out to Anindya Kundu. But the story is about my dad, who he did the traditional sacrifice. He worked at a job that he didn't really like. He was a principal engineer at Intel. So if you ever had a Pentium in your computer, thanks to my dad. He hated work politics. He wasn't good at it, but he loved politics at home. Being somewhat liberal, he loved the Clintons but hated the Bushes. He loved the Clintons until the sex scandal. Anything related to sex, just my dad wasn't down with. Watching TV, he would fast forward sex scenes on TV with remotes that were covered in plastic wrap. It's like an immigrant thing. And he had thick glasses, a thin mustache, and other than hand-me-downs, it was like this weird hand-me-up situation where when I grew tired of my basketball shoes, he would just start wearing them to work with jeans that he wore way too many years in a row, day after day. And that was the perception I had of my father growing up, as this like giant dork, until the day that my family took me and dropped me off at college, move-in day. They moved me in. My family does everything together. My mom, my dad, my sister. They were all there. They moving me into my Technicolor dorm room. And then they went into the rental car on their way to the airport. And me, having somehow grown up and being the smartass that I am, I said something like, "This will be a great semester if I just don't get arrested." And my dad, he turned to me and he's like, "That's pretty funny, except when I was your age, I was actually arrested in India. And I spent 18 months in jail in Kolkata." And I looked at my mom, I looked at my sister, because surely this man that I had seen cry at an episode of The Brady Bunch, he didn't go to jail, right? But they had heard the story before. So I asked him about it. And apparently he did. When he was my age at the time, he really recognized the impoverished conditions of people in the villages of India. He noticed that people were living off of like eating one onion a day for sustenance and a glass of water. So he just started organizing on a basic level. He and his friends went into the villages. They started educating people. They told people about the basic rights that they should expect from the government. And being India and being not America at the time, on the way back from the university one day, a squad car picked him up, threw him in the back, and put him in jail. And my grandparents asked, but there was no trial, there was no questioning, there was no due process. He just spent 18 months in jail. And I asked him a little bit more about it, and so he then finally told me about the tough conditions, the deplorable conditions. 6 to 8 men would be in a cell together, a cell that was made for 3 or 4 people. They would share one toilet in the ground. Bacteria was all over the place, so men had hives all over their bodies. They were supposed to have a boiled egg, bread, and lentils every day for lunch, but the guards would take everything except the lentils, which they did not wash, so they were covered in bugs. And yet, he said it wasn't that hard, because outside of the jail, he knew that people had it almost as bad, if not worse, than inside. And I think about that from time to time, and Anyone who knows my dad wearing my old sneakers would never think that he had been to jail. And so when I think about my first world problems, trying to write my dissertation, I think about that. And it's interesting because he didn't just have this sacrifice where he worked this job that he didn't like, but he made this sacrifice really related to his identity, where he kind of gave up a part of who he was. And luckily, because of that sacrifice, I've been able to my career is now in educational equity. And so it's funny, when you work in this space, sometimes you get called a social justice warrior, which is funny for two reasons. If you know anything about justice, of course it's social. Two, that's an unwarranted compliment. When I think about people like my dad, I'm not a warrior. I'm not putting myself on the line like people in this climate today really are. If anything, I'm just upholding the bargain that I made to my parents back in the day, which was just to try to be a nice person and treat people the way that I want to be treated. Thank you.
Nindo. I believe brown Ryan Gosling is how you describe yourself? Dude, you gotta let other people describe you that way. It ruins it. You can't be like, hi, I'm the brown Ryan Gosling. But everyone has a version of what they think they look like in the mirror, and Nindo is mine. It's yeah, I'm that handsome. Yeah, I walk up to the stage okay, I'm gonna put my beer down, let's do this. Great.